Hello, my name is John Teply, and today I have the great pleasure to be introducing Noah Alexander Isaac Stein III, or for those of us who meet him around town, Noah. Noah is quite involved in the community. He is currently the executive director for First Friday PDX. He has a history of being involved with international work. Art Knows No Borders. I believe he was one of the founding people for that organization. He's helped with the International Mural by Mail project, and we're currently looking at him at his current residence at the East Creative Collective. How are you doing, Noah?
I'm doing pretty well. It's nice to be able to do an interview here. It feels like I'm in my natural habitat,
Good. Well, you do some really interesting work that I've always admired. I mean, it's
thank you, John.
You're welcome. It's a difficult balancing act to do work that is abstract, but also has representational qualities in it too. I mean, generally it seems to either use one or the other for a crutch, but to be able to work with both in a balanced way, I think is rare, and I think you succeed too. Could you talk a little bit about your work and your process? I mean, when you have that blank canvas, what are some of your first thoughts?
Well, that's the most exciting time period. There's so much possibility, and I guess I feel, what you're talking about that balance of abstraction and kind of representation, it speaks, I think, to kind of the general artistic practice, I feel, which comes down to chaos and control. When you're entering into a blank canvas or blank sheet paper, there's this wonderful element of just pure expressiveness that comes out. And I kind of view that as almost this like formatic, chaotic place where everything's possible, and things out of that space kind of start to emerge. And, this goes both for kind of the literal work, as it starts off with, coming from a place of large kind of expressive strokes and movements into slowly kind of becoming something more solid. And
so when you work, are you an artist who knows exactly where it's going to go? All these sketches and then you go there, or is it a process of discovery, correction, putting positive elements?
I think it's always a dynamic process. I mean, sometimes, very rarely, I get an image that comes to me complete, be in a kind of like a dreamlike state, and it's just an image, and it's a finished work. But even in that point, there's still an element of, kind of the emotional aspect of it. How do I carry this out? And so I guess I view it kind of, the whole work is a discovery process, and even in a stage when it comes out and I have that image of the work, of what it will be in the end, oftentimes I don't fully understand the work, and it's working on it. I eventually, I'll piece together and I'll say, oh, in retrospect, it'd be quite obvious. You say, oh, this was what was going on. This is why this is here. This is what this is trying to communicate. But it's this aspect of the kind of unknown, reaching out and expressing itself.
So
I don't know if that answered your question at all.
Well, I'm not sure, but it's interesting, and so can you talk about unifying opposites? Because looking at your work, you have this whatever size it is, and often the works really turn out, and so you've been able to resolve something about opposites.
Yeah, I mean, I view that kind of as one of the fundamental parts of painting. And I mean, it goes back to what I was talking about before about those two dynamics of chaos and control. And I think those are both kind of compositional elements, but they're also kind of psychological elements, where it's the two parts of yourself, the different kind of ideas. And I think kind of when you have, the most pure moments of expression, when you get the best work, it's when there's a unity of these things. And it's kind of, I'm reminded of a Buddhist concept, and the concept is basically that we're trapped in cyclical existence by a series of unifying links, and there's no way to break any one of the links because they're all interconnected, and the only way to kind of break it is to kind of grow beyond it. So it's almost like you're thinking in 2 dimensions and you actually have to go in 3 dimensions. And I guess that's kind of what it feels like in a way, where there's this combination of opposites, but the opposites only exist in one perspective. And a big part of the process of creation is getting to a state, both with the work and also with the subjective state of the artist, where it's just a singular moment. So
in chaos, there's certain elements that are out of control. I mean, because it's not harmony, it's chaos.
Can be, yeah.
And within that, it leaves the opportunity for something unexpected to happen. Mm-hmm. Is that something that you encourage, look for in your work, or is it just another aspect of the process?
I guess I like to always encourage it to come through. I mean, I think, the biggest part of painting for me is kind of that element of spirit, or the intangible, and I guess it can only come through from those unknown places, and so I do think there's importance in the other part that kind of can play that role. But I guess I view that the essential spirit, if you want, of the work comes from that unknown spirit. So I always try to leave room for that, at any stage of the painting to come out and kind of express itself.
Can you talk about intangible qualities and what?
Oh, definitely. I love intangible qualities, and there's so many ways you can talk about it, but I think
well, okay, so you're
well, it's funny to talk about, isn't it? Because it's intangible, but
yeah, I think making a thing, but you have this thing in front of you, and there's something that's not physical that you're trying to express, and you're doing it on a physical thing. And it could be something spiritual, could be something emotional. There's all different ways that these intangible qualities, make themselves known. Mm-hmm. Could you talk a little bit about what kind of qualities it is that's in your experience, and what you're driving for? Yeah,
I mean, I think, in the end, it's like our artwork is the totality of our personal lives, and each, work it's like a little chip of your soul or something. And so, sometimes I have my own ideas about what a painting is coming from or the place it's going, but the reality is that even if it addresses a larger issue, ultimately it's something personal. And so, one of the things I love about the 7th generation actually is that, I love the outdoors. I love going on trips where I'll spend a week in the wilderness. I hike at least, a couple times a week. And so I have a very intense kind of emotional experience of these places, and I think, that's something that is non-conceptual, it's just an essential feeling. And so, for instance, that I think comes through my work, or, I'm working on another one right now that was involved in kind of the racial justice protests that happened about, in, I guess, 2 years ago now. And kind of being involved in them and my own feelings. And
do you have that there in your studio?
Yeah, it's in progress. I can show you, but
sure, yeah.
Sure.
That's good. I mean,
hopefully I ain't watching
more chaos anyway. So
yeah, well, hopefully everyone will forgive me for showing a in progress piece, but you can kind of see I was working on it yesterday, so I don't know how that does. But I was in this this exhibit in Washington D.C. and it was about 2020 and all the chaos that happened then. And it had this section on the racial justice protests. And it was all it felt very sterile to me. It felt like the work of people who maybe were very, intellectually sympathetic to it, but maybe hadn't had as a, let's say, visceral a role in it as we did here in Portland, and I think, it kind of, I didn't like it very much. It felt like, I mean, I'm very happy it was positive towards kind of, the side I was aligned with, but it felt sterile.
Yeah.
It didn't feel like the human experience, and the human experience is so complex. We want it to fit in certain boxes to, align with an ideology, but the reality is that it's more complex, and we feel all sorts of things. We feel chaos, we feel confusion, we feel doubt, we feel hope, and these things all kind of merge together into something that I don't think is fully expressible with words, and I think that's kind of the essential power of art. You can kind of get to things that you can't talk about in words. So,
what I really like about that piece that you just showed us is, it's a very emotional painting, and we don't even need to know what's going on.
Yeah.
But just by the color and your brush strokes, and the elk, which only people who know, for those of you who do not live in Portland, and that's a statue of elk and close to our central downtown. Actually, it's right across from the federal building and our city court system. But it's actually, I think, better not knowing that, just
well, we can cut out that part of the interview then. Don't.
Just to get that mythic element of the elk, their speed, their durability, their majesty. There's all those qualities that have been noticed, and it's just to see this elk framed by this inferno, and then there's these shapes, and we don't know what the shapes are exactly, but we know exactly what the shapes are, and it's a very powerful piece, I believe.
Thank you. Well, another thing that was going around the same time was, of course, we had very large wildfires here, and the smoke was absolutely, I think, for a week or something, we had the worst air quality in the world by a large margin. And it was just, you even go outside for a couple of minutes, you're coughing, your eyes are watering, and it really felt like kind of one of those things where it's like we've been through everything else, from COVID to these massive, focus of attention on the national stage, and suddenly we get that. And for me, that was really felt like the true low point of 2020. And, and these were caused by, of all things, destruction of these places that we loved so much by fire, which is an essential, it's hard to think of something that's more representation of the embodiment of destruction. It is destruction. And, tying it back to seventh generation, there's that emotive impact and that connection to the environment,
Noah, you were in the Middle East, and you were one of the founders. Were you one of the founders or the founder of an international project working with Palestine?
Initially, it was put together by myself and Mai Garces, a Chilean artist, and we were the two initial founders. And then in later years, we were joined by a German, Russian, Israeli artist, Sophia Kosel, as well as numerous kind of other people who were helped along the way.
Could you tell me about the project and talk about the importance of it?
Absolutely. I mean, so kind of the project was originally born out of, there was a environmental research institute that does eco research between, it's meant to be all areas of the Levant, so Israeli, Palestinian, and Jordanian. And the basic concept of it is that, there's, a thousand things that divide and 1,000 reasons for conflict. But the environment is a unifying thing, and of course the environment is a very delicate kind of critical thing over there. The Dead Sea is drying up very rapidly. The Jordan River is incredibly polluted. There's all sorts of environmental issues. And, the Jordan River, for instance, is the classic border between, various political entities going back and forth kind of in the region, Israel and Jordan and, the West Bank. And, and so kind of, this is something that affects everyone. So if there's pollution in the Jordan River, it doesn't matter whether you're Israeli or Palestinian, these water rights are affecting you. And so we kind of saw that as something we could build upon and kind of use as a factor for, finding common ground. And so the idea was basically to use art as a similar issue. And so our first festival was actually an eco arts festival. And we brought, Israeli and Palestinian artists together. And as well as we had some other we were joined by Iraqi art, musician as well, and a English dancer. And the overall theme was that, we as artists speak kind of this universal language. And, whatever we're expressing comes from a universal place. And whatever your experience is, experiences on either side of the wall, you're coming from, you have that essential universal kind of expressive thing to it. And so we ended up doing it for 3 consecutive years, or actually, I'm sorry, there was a break for one of the years. And we did it initially through Kickstarter, and then we did it several other times after a grant. And it was a very good project. I think, it's funny because in the region, there's so many things that are constant. There's this constant kind of pull and push between factors that unify and divide. There's common cultural elements. So you have a very heavily militarized border, for instance, full of checkpoints and bristling with barbed wires and rifles and artillery, and on the same time that you have common cultural elements. You see the same food being eaten, similar music being listened to, kind of even the languages share so much in common, and so it's kind of fascinating to see this kind of pull and push. And it really, for me, I find that those common cultural elements very edifying. It feels like, and art is a part of that. And it feels like this is something that is good. This is something that is, forming a counterbalance to kind of the things that pull apart,
So what was could you talk a little bit about the interaction of a multinational group of people in a war-torn area? Just what it was like on the personal level, and what creating things, how that played into it.
It's a very challenging environment to work in. People carry a lot of kind of personal experiences with them, a lot of them traumatic, And so I think anytime you're doing kind of something, there's once again that push and the pull. You have people who are, people who, really want to work towards, peaceful resolution to these issues, but they also carry with them, the trauma of all the things that happened, all the violence that's been done. And it's very challenging, and I think kind of it definitely has moments of kind of focus points where kind of things are really tense, but in the end, what I kept finding out was it felt like, when we were working with artists, and I use that in the broad sense of, musicians, dancers, visual artists, it felt like there was a similar, there was a greater connection there, it's like, and it felt like kind of that aspect of it really kind of served as a very, both as a release valve, and also as a kind of a unifying force.
Could you talk a little bit about your feelings about future generations? We've received this amazing planet, and we're going to be passing it on. What does all that mean?
I don't know. For me, sometimes it feels like, we have our little human tempests, and our tumultuous periods of upheaval and change and all these things. And, we're caught up in them, and they seem so, all encompassing as when we're part of them. And yet, you go into the forests here, and the forest has been here for, if it's an old growth forest, several thousand years more. You get trees that are, 700 years old, and you're touching this. And it makes all our kind of little human kind of battles feel so unimportant. And so I guess for me, I feel like it's just whatever goes on with our own struggles, this is something we should preserve. This is something that should outlast us. And I guess, I'm of the school of environmental thought that I really have think that, and it's kind of paradoxical, I suppose, because, it's only humans that can look at a forest and find, a human understanding about why it's valuable. But I believe also paradoxically that it is valuable of its own accord. And it's something that just is, and it's worthwhile. So it would be a great shame if our struggle in that, all our struggles, we lost any of that.
It is a particular human quality, that we can be conscious of and recognize, the powerful forces of like creation, of just existence in itself, and of all the entities that we share the planet with. We're a unique creature in that way.
Absolutely. It's nice to have a little, both be an environmentalist, but also have that human optimism to it. I think that's important.
I think
I agree with that. Yeah.
Important. Yeah. Well, we've been talking with Noah Stein. He's going to be exhibiting work at the Lincoln City Cultural Center from July 13th through the 17th. And for those that are listening to the interview, come join us. Maybe he rides a motorcycle everywhere, and then maybe
stubbornly so. Yes.
So, well, thank you, Noah, for the talk. Do you have anything?
Thank you for having me.
Say?
What's that?
Do you have any final thoughts?
I don't think so. Just thank you for having me and for putting on the Seventh Generation. I think it's a great project. So I can't wait to see everyone else's work either.
Well, bye for now, and we'll see everybody later. Bye-bye.
So yeah.